I went from anxious to secure attachment without therapy, and I want to share how I did that. For years, I had this big fear of abandonment, and because of that, I chased people. I was a people pleaser, and I was only attracted to emotionally unavailable women. I had a very hard time demanding my needs. It always like my needs are secondary to my romantic partners. The only way I can get my needs met is when I make sure the other person get their needs met first. I was extremely hyper vigilant. I had a very hard time trusting people. It's always like, are they cheating on me? Are they lying behind my back? And I needed constant reassurance and validation from my partners. My emotional well-being is entirely dependent on the other person. It's always like I can only be okay if you are okay. So I make extremely sure that my romantic partner are okay because I was extremely dependent on them. Maybe you might think yourself as this over-loving, over-giving lover who is getting mistreated, but it's actually not. We have unhealthy attachment. We have this codependency, and this is not our identity. This is something we learn from our childhood because we had broken attachment with our parents. All these anxious or even avoidant, these all happened because we didn't had healthy, secure attachment between our parents. So it is very important to know what is the root cause of our anxious attachment, because only when you know them, you become aware of them and you can break the cycle, right? So there are generally 5 causes of this anxious attachment. The first one is inconsistent parental responses. On regular basis, your parents might be caring and loving, but suddenly they started fighting and they're yelling at each other. And because of that, sometimes you get a loving mommy and daddy, but on other times, you just get yelled at for no reason or whatever. And as a child, you didn't know when you will get good responses. That unpredictability make you anxious, and that anxious appear as this anxious attachment. I want you to grab a notebook and journal about this. Ask yourself, how was my childhood unpredictable? And what role unpredictability played in my childhood? And I really want you to understand that. I really want you to be aware of your childhood and your patterns. The second thing is over-intrusive or overbearing caregivers or parents. These are parents who are extremely intrusive in a child's life. They are the kind of parents who don't allow a kid to have its own space. They're the kind of parents who go through a kid's phone. I mean, they're always on top of you. They're always here. They're always there. They're constantly worried about the child's safety. So they do these kind of things. But because of that, they don't allow a child to have its own agency and independence. And your parents might think the world is extremely dangerous, so they're always around you and they're always saying those things to you. So this creates a nervous system, you as a child, where you as well think the world is dangerous, so you automatically give up your sense of independence to the authority of your parents. And if that happened to you later in life as an adult, you will start to outsource this to your romantic partners. You will have a hard time giving space to your partners. You're always on top of them. You're always checking in because this is a familiar experience to you. Number 3 is emotional dependency encouraged by your caregivers or your parents. Sometimes, maybe when your parents are extremely insecure or maybe they are going through some kind of problem, they had this massive need to be important and to be dependent. So they directly or indirectly encourage you to be dependent on them. Number 4 is parental unavailability or absence. This is a case where your parents are physically or emotionally unavailable. Maybe they're just busy with work or they're just absent. Because of that, you don't get your needs met. You don't get what you wanted. You don't get your emotional needs met. Or maybe your parents are addict. And as you probably know, any addict will choose the substance of their addiction over everything else. So as a kid, you always felt second. As a kid, you never felt chosen. You feel sad and anxious that your parents are not choosing you. And this creates this anxiety again. And number 5 is abuse trauma or PTSD. If you had experienced some kind of insane trauma or you had PTSD, you will have anxiety in your body, and that anxiety will link to that trauma, and it will appear as this anxious attachment. Okay, these are the 5 ones, and I want you to be aware of, and I want you to find which one of these 5 things is relatable to you, which one of these feels similar to your childhood. Maybe you relate to one of these, 2, or even 3. In my case, I grew up in an emotionally unpredictable household, and I had an emotionally unavailable father. And it was not like he was intentionally doing that. He was just busy with work, and he had some problems. And if I'm being totally honest to you, I have daddy issue, and all of my problems stem from my issues with my father. So I want you to be aware of any of these things. And I want you to go into deep journaling. I want you to go back to your memory and really think about these situations, because awareness is the first step to fix anything. How do we fix anxious attachment? You have to realize that all these patterns, all these behaviors are broken attachment. And as a kid, you didn't know how to get your needs met. So maybe you learn to people please, maybe you learn to overachieve, maybe you learn to get approval so much from your parents. Basically, you have learned to outsource your emotional need by doing these things. You need to learn to trust yourself again. But it sounds so easy to say, but when in reality it's extremely hard. The reason is, when you're anxious, when you're in this people-pleasing mood, when you're in this always chasing, always overgiving situation, you are extremely anxious. Brain situation, it's very similar when you're also stressed. So you're in some fight or flight situation, or even actual fight or flight full-blown situation. And because of you feel so unsafe within your own body, you seek this approval, you seek this validation, even though logically you might know these things are not good for you. The reason is, when you're in this fight or flight situation, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain which makes logical decision, is completely turned off. That's why you just could not make decisions. So you're in this up-regulated fight or flight situation, and you need to learn to down-regulate yourself. You basically have to learn to regulate your nervous system. And in order to do that, you have to learn how to control your breath. And if you are interested in nervous system regulation, I already made a video about it. Basically, you are using your breath to shift you from this fight or flight sympathetic state to relax and digest parasympathetic state. Only then you will able to make logical decisions. Only then you can decide what is right and what is wrong. You can respond instead of just react. So doing box breathing is very good. Basically, you are doing a 4-second inhale, 4-second hold, 4-second exhale, and then 4-second hold. And you're repeating it for 4 to 5 minutes. Just do it once and you will see that you will feel so relaxed. And you'll see that you don't have that need to chase again. You don't have that need to extremely hyper-reactive. So that is one thing. You need to learn to control your breath. Second thing is, you need to give yourself the needs that your younger version of you never got it. Right now, what is happening is, since you had this broken attachment with your parents, you are trying to get your needs met by extremely over-dependent on your partners, and that result in you pushing them away. What we're trying to do is, after we done this box breathing, when we are relaxed, again grab a notebook and ask yourself, as a kid, what kind of validation and reassurance I needed from my parents. And then give that to yourself. So validate yourself. Every time you have done something hard, every time you have done something amazing to yourself, write it or tell it to yourself that I am proud for you. I see what you're doing. Basically, you are learning to regulate your nervous system to make yourself calm so that you can make great decisions. And you are learning the skill to giving yourself your own needs, filling your own cup first. Because the reality is no one will able to give you what you want if you are broken inside, if you have this deep void inside you. When you are doing these kind of things to yourself, you are being emotionally available to yourself for the first time. Because all these years, you had abandoned yourself, you were being emotionally unavailable to yourself. No wonder people are being emotionally unavailable to you, because you yourself had abandoned yourself for a long time. And it's not your fault, because these anxiety symptoms, all these behaviors are so painful and you don't know what to do, right? So you did the very own things you might think that might save you. You might think that would make you feel good, but it didn't. And I want you to realize that when you decided to change from this anxious to secure, you are breaking a decade-long pattern. So it is going to be painful. It is going to be super uncomfortable to change your behavior. But every time you have this alarm, every time you have this urge to chase people, every time you have this urge to seek extra reassurance from people, do that box breathing to calm yourself, and then give that reassurance, give that validation to you. In that way, you will able to fix your anxious attachment, and you will realize that after some amount of time, when you started to emotionally available to you, you will start to attract good people in your life, because you are being available to you. I hope this video helped, and thank you so much for watching, guys.